Hello, hello. Welcome back to Regenerative Business with Sam Garcia. I am Sam Garcia, and today's episode is a little bit different. This is actually an interview that my husband Eddy and I did with Erin West of Humans Who Trade, which is a community and course for people doing somatic trading, like financial trading on the market. She has been on the podcast before. I'll have to link in the show notes to that episode. But Erin interviewed the two of us about our land here on Maui, what it actually looks like to take a piece of barren, depleted land and regenerate it back into a thriving ecosystem. And then she pulls that out into this really beautiful conversation about our relationship with money, with enoughness and scarcity and abundance. You're going to hear Eddy talk a lot about soil and trees and mycelium networks and mangoes, but I promise it all maps. This one's a good one. If you wanted some behind the scenes on my dynamic with my husband, this is also lovely too, and definitely applies whether or not you are into farming or not. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, everyone, we are here with Sam and Eddy Garcia, who are regenerative farmers in Maui. And today we are going to talk about the actual process of taking a piece of land that feels barren and dry and dead, and the process of regenerating it into an abundant, diverse ecosystem. And then we're also going to extend that to the metaphor of money, right? Which is really this concept of scarcity is underpinning our entire culture for the last 8,000 years, roughly, after the end of the matriarchies and when the patriarchy came in, which was actually truly related to a scarcity of food, right? It was due to ecological change, and all of a sudden there's a scarcity of livestock, and now we needed certain people to create territories to control that livestock to feed the communities. And so then we went from collaboration and abundance to competition, domination, and hierarchy, and war. So we are going to look at metaphorically, how can we use this actual process that Sam and Eddy do as a metaphor for our own relationship with not only money, but enoughness. And so I'd like to introduce Sam and Eddy.
Thanks for having us, Erin. We're really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you two. And I would love to hear, just as a starting point, like, how did you both, what were your paths to getting to this work?
Want to start?
Yes. Okay. So mine I feel like is a more straightforward story. I when I went to college, I studied physics and ended up in minoring in environmental studies, and that's where my heart was, but I was like on the path of like getting a physics degree, so I was like all of my extra time was in environmental sustainability work. And I had this huge dark night of the soul during that period of learning all of what the scientists were saying about the future, and like humans pretty much taking over the earth and the earth not being able to support our human population, and be like, it's too late. And then eventually finding regenerative agriculture and realizing there are solutions exist. It does require a huge teardown of a lot of the systems that are taking over right now. But I found myself on Maui living an alternative life, and I went on one of Eddy's farm tours, and that's how we met 13 years ago.
I love that.
Yeah.
And me, I grew up here on Maui and a lot of my life on Molokai, which is a really small island here in the Hawaiian Islands. And I got failed in the first grade for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So I sort of took a different route for my education. Rather than conventional schooling, I sort of went a different path and let nature sort of be my teacher. And so I've been living on my own since I was 12 or 13 years old. Off grid, living in a remote valley on Molokai and here on Maui. And I've been farming since I was a kid, and surfing. I got fortunate enough where I got contracts for surfing and was able to travel around the world. and for kite surfing later on in life. And I've been able to sort of mix that with a really simple life: surf and grow food. Just pretty simple. And the reason that path was pretty easy for me is I've always been sort of interested in stewardship. Visiting the mainland a few times, and there's different places I went in the world and looked at all the trash and the lack of connection to nature. People just didn't have a lot of reverence for really taking care of things the way that they needed to be taken care of. That sort of like unfolded a path of just living close to nature and reaping the rewards of its wealth. And then with later on in life, realizing that a lot of people are looking for that connection and that it's not that hard. And maybe we can help by sharing some of our experiences and whatnot and teaching others to kind of open up and build that relationship with Mother Nature, if you want to call it that. Yeah. It's a really
Wow.
summarized brief.
Yeah,
But
what an interesting, beautiful life and unconventional for sure in this era. You mentioned stewardship. What does that mean for you?
I think stewardship for me is uh, recognizing probably the only thing that's not illusion. The fact that it's going to rain, the sun will come out, it's night is going to come, daytime's going to come, things are going to work in cycles. Plants are going to grow in cycles. I don't know, just everything that's nature. We've sort of everything we seem to know as nature, or our connection for nature, either comes from mountain biking or hiking, or oh, our food comes from there, but we don't really know how our food comes from there. So, kind of having an understanding or a connection to what you eat and what your footprint is. Like, for instance, what are you putting in your washing machine? Where's it going? Do you have a swimming pool? Where's all the chlorine going every time there's a chlorine change? If you're using plastic clothes, every time you wash your clothes, are the particles going right down the drain? And just collectively, billions and billions of people having a footprint that they have no idea what that footprint actually is and what the effects of it are. So for me, when coming from here, where we have like pristine, clean streams in some areas and the areas that I was at, and then going to places like California that are supposed to be the marker of, good, healthy environment, and every stream is completely polluted. There's asphalt everywhere. Everyone's washers are dumping into the ground and people have chlorinated pools. Just, and I'm not trying to play all doom and gloom, but as a species, we're kind of completely asleep to what actual stewardship looks like. To grow food for ourselves, we displace everything from the foxes to the wolves to the birds to the bees so that it's for us. And I feel like the planet was set up with a perfect system in place if we knew how to play a part in it rather than just dominate it. Yeah, so sorry, I'm going off on a rant on that one.
We love the rants. So
Yes.
with stewardship, and like I spend most of my working hours as like on the internet online, and like Eddy is like all the time outside. Like that's his full-time thing is outside in nature. And just from watching him, it's interesting that there's a book written by Charles Darwin. Like he spent the last few decades or few years, I'm not sure what length of time.
Almost like a decade and in
The
one,
last
yeah.
decade of his life studying earthworm. That's like when he was like in house arrest because sure. And his observations were, I think it was the earthworms when left alone will do 1 inch every 100 years of new topsoil. And just from like me in partnership with Eddy, watching him work with the land, because of his intentional choices, he can build an inch of topsoil in probably a few years, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's stewardship. Recognizing that humans can play a positive role in regenerating the planet. Like at least in the environmental space, there's this, some people have this perception, like we need to get humans out of nature because we fuck everything up. But like, what if the truth is like when you're acting in stewardship, you actually can create a better world and regenerate things faster because of human intervention and collaboration.
Yeah, like for instance, it takes eons for a forest to do its thing. To create a healthy forest, it'll take eons from nature. But now, if we're actually the caretakers, then I can create a forest in 3 years the same thing it'll take a forest on its own to do in 100 years. And that's because of my observations, because of that human factor, that we can hold on to it and we can create a science of our observations. And we know that, okay, what's happening? Leaves are falling. These bugs are eating them. They're cycling them into the ground. So where that's not happening, it's only because humans have disrupted it. And it only takes us 5 minutes to destroy something that's been there for 10,000 years. Cover it in concrete, till it down deep, and we've destroyed everything in an instant. So it kind of leaves a sense of hopelessness for us as humans. Like, why bother to fix it? It's so broken. We don't really have a chance. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. And I think when you have examples and you set examples, that with the human factor, it's kind of our magic, our alchemy on the planet, is that we can be good caretakers and we can put these things together to mimic what a forest does in 100 years in just a very short time. So once we're committed to that and we see it for what it is and we're responsible for it, like once you know it, you can't unknow it. And so a lot of people like to almost live in ignorance because they don't want to have to compost. They don't want to have to be accountable for where their laundry's going out of their laundry machine. Just something that simple. Oh my God, I got to think about it. I got to engineer it. What do I do? So yeah, there's a lot that comes with it. So I think we need a lot more good examples of what stewardship is. And there's so many different facets of it on so many different levels of it. Yeah. So it's a loaded question.
Well, isn't it? There's also a piece of like, the root of it, it's relationship, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like not seeing your individual self as more important than others, and even the human race is more important than the other species and minerals and beings on this planet.
Sometimes we don't even know something's gone wrong. And you look like you want to say something, so I don't want to interrupt.
But just to your point, Sam, I think we are all collectively suffering from a profound disconnection, right? Mm-hmm. A profound disconnection to the natural world, as if it is separate, by the way, as if there are humans and then the natural world, as if we are not also
an animal, right, as well.
But it's all holographic, right? Because as above, so below. So our profound disconnection from nature, which never needed a word until we were disconnected from it, right? It just was, right? It was all that was. And we're also profoundly disconnected from ourselves, from each other, right? And so I feel like it's this restoration of interconnectedness, right? Of interdependence. You know, I'm thinking of the pollinators and the flowers. I'm thinking of Michael Pollan's book, The Botany of Desire, how flowers have evolved with humans, right? For humans, not like to serve us, but because there's this beautiful symbiosis. And so if we are going to be destroyers, which we have been in the past several millennia, it makes sense that we could also be co-creators. But I think that's not a concept that's in the world, right? It's like we can only create damage and we are outside of nature. Right?
I think it's a concept that's in the world. It's not so mainstream.
Yeah.
And I think fear, a lack of faith, so many different things. And I don't mean faith in a religion. Yeah. I mean faith in the systems that we were born into as stewards. We don't realize the power we carry and what we can accomplish. You know, it's like, it's mind blowing if we really set our minds to it, what we can do. And I say that as one person who's transformed thousands of acres of land by myself with a pick and a shovel, sometimes with a tractor, but just staying at it. And it becomes, people are like, oh, it's so much work. Well, if you really love to do something, it like kind of becomes your fun, or in a sense.
A term that I heard recently is like, there's a huge difference between a meaningless job and meaningful work.
Yeah,
like,
do you work to live or live to work?
Crave meaningful work.
Yeah, do you work to live or live to work? That thing that's like that resurfaces all the time. So
I think if we're here in a general sense to talk about the path from scarcity to abundance, I feel like this is one path, that one thread that I'm pulling out already is that you're saying, like, if you like the work, if there's meaning in it, right? There's more ease. You're working, there's effort, there's action being put in, but perhaps it doesn't feel so much like this concept of work that we're
there's a gratification from it. There's a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. Right. And so there's a meaning there as you're taking these steps and as you're doing the efforting. So
it's like this deep satisfaction, but okay, continue.
I feel like we need hours. So Okay, paint the picture for us, maybe those of us who are sort of new to this world of regenerative agriculture. What's the opposite spectrum before we get into what it looks like, this lush, regenerative, like rich inches of topsoil ecosystem? Tell us about, for example, monocropping, like monocropping on Maui. What is that
So I
like?
can, so I'll tell you the opposite end of the spectrum. It started with James Dean leaving the farm. I can't look at that. I
I'll
need to
share
look
the
at her.
other.
It started with James Dean leaving the farm and wanting to smoke cigarettes and drive a little fancy car and slick his hair back and go to the city. There was no one left in the generation, and they're like, oh, I'd rather live that life than grandpa with a piece of straw on the tractor or whatever it was. You know what I mean? And in this transition of time, all of grandma's apple pie made out of her apple tree that she grew, you know what I mean? Like that whole concept, 90% of all people were farmers, and it was all organic.
All of our
Before
ancestors.
the Industrial Revolution, not even that far back, just 80, 100 years. 200 years ago, 90% of people were farmers.
Yeah.
Now it's less than 1%. And the Industrial Revolution, where we realized we could mimic nitrogen in the form of ammonium nitrate, the same thing we were making bombs out of, that we could grow food on this major level. And so then the big corporations kind of took advantage of the James Dean movement, I call it, because the kids didn't want to be their parents. They didn't want to live this life of subsistence. They wanted to see the glorious city in the future or whatever it was. And the big corporations came in and they took the small farms, and they're no more. So we let that happen, and we chose the supermarket. I say we as a collective of humans. So we chose to get our broccoli from the supermarket. Then we chose work and all those other things and a different method rather than a connection to nature. So we no longer needed it anymore. So we just needed a supermarket. And now we got trained on cheap food. One thing people should understand is food should not be cheap. It should, and there's a weird thing with that, because if it's not cheap, you should be able to grow it yourself, then it's free. So there's this like weird thing, but all the people want cheap food, and cheap food is like this picture of the pineapple thing, if she has it on the picture there. It's built out of slavery. It's built out of not paying anything for the workers to harvest or do any of that. So the almond fields, for instance, are a good example. So in Southern California, where almonds didn't really grow, they're from South America. They need a lot of water, like an astronomical amount of water. They cleared hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of square miles, and they put nothing but almonds. So that means everything that could live there could no longer live there. Bees, for instance, had thousands of different trees that bloomed at different times of the year, so they could live there. They'd always have food. Now, because it's 100,000 square or whatever the square miles is, I don't want to quote it. It's absolutely ridiculous. A bee can't live there because there's no food for him. Because the only food that exists in that place for a bee only exists for 2 months out of the year when they're flowering. 2 weeks out of the year, 6 weeks, I think, when they're flowering in
They have to
cycles.
bring the bees in.
So now they put the bees from all over the nation under this major stress. They lose a percentage of them every time. And now all of the diseases that the bees have, they're all right next to each other in a stressful situation. We can attribute this to colony collapse, varroa mite, chalk brood, all these other things. So this is just one thing. Now imagine the bees can't live there. What happened to the foxes, the possums, the whatever else used to live there, the mountain lions? Everything is gone for humans' idea that they can have almonds all over the place. And we don't
but more so it's the economies of scales of profit for corporations.
Yeah, and so
farming.
So we've traded that rather than stewardship. And with that, we've given up our understanding of this relationship to our mother, in a sense. Like, if we give, we get. You reap what you sow. There are so many relationships and so many forms of wealth that are above what my words could possibly do any justice to. The health of having dirt under your fingernails all the time. I never get sick. I rarely ever have. I go for years and years without catching a common cold. People are sick around me all the time. It's because I'm constantly in the dirt, and I feel like there's something to be said for that. And there's this reward of gratification, I mentioned it earlier, to grow your tree and to be able to give that mango to someone that you grew from seed or that you showed all of the stewardship to. That's one side of the scale. The other side of the scale is this land is just barren and it's only a machine to produce, to sell to others. And you can only do that by exploiting others to do it. I don't know. So it's such a
The land gets more and more barren year after
yeah,
year.
barren year
Yes.
after year. Chemical you can grow food with, you can't grow soil. If and we've kept it up on such a stage. They say we're down to only like 2% of the planet's original loamous topsoil.
Yes.
So it's like we got to start planting trees and building soil and showing massive stewardship on a massive level to really even think of us existing as humans for another 200 years, even that long. Like it's.
And which is why our food itself is so deplete, right? Like even if you're growing a pineapple or whatever in this monocropped field, and if there's really no topsoil there, and you're essentially forcing the earth to produce with your chemical
Right.
fertilizers, and you're producing something that looks like a pineapple, right? But it doesn't, for example, taste like
No nutrient density, no flavor
No-
profile.
no, it's deceptive effectively. And so again, that pineapple is also in a state of scarcity. Like it's pervasive in our entire collective at this point. And I remember I was living in San Francisco. I had just had my daughter. We were in the city and I desperately wanted to farm. Like I had been born on a farm near, the mouth of the Columbia at the Pacific. And I was like going to raise my kids like this. So my husband got a job in Ohio, which I was not excited about, but I was like, okay, I'll go if we can have a farm. And, I was like very much in the literature about regenerative farming and all of this. So I was going to figure it out, even though I hadn't done it in my life. My parents had done it. And so we go and we have everything set up, we're doing a lot of rotational grazing. I mean, nothing to the extent that you two do, but like trying to do it right, having no experience at all. And I remember the day we were flanked by these empty, barren fields. And it was the winter when we moved in. And then the spring came and these John Deere tractors that looked so post-apocalyptic, like they were wild. They were actually frightening. They were so big and scary. And they came and I just watched them spray the barren soil with all of their chemicals. And I was a food lawyer, right? So I was in the world of like glyphosate and Monsanto at the time and all of that kind of stuff. And literally I cried because I had tried, we had like moved across the country to live this life and literally all around us, right? And so we were there for 3.5 years. I watched those cycles of our land, which was already quite healthy, but was regenerating versus theirs, which was right next door. And it feels dead to be on it. Like the soil there was this pale, brown, dry, lifeless soil versus I grew up in the Northwest going hiking in the forest and the soil is like black and spongy and like has the smell for me that I identify with just soil that is alive. And it's, so in your experience, when you go to a piece of land, someone wants to work with you so that you can regenerate it or you decide to do it yourself. Like what for you does it feel like when you're on land that feels barren or dead?
And I want to prompt, I think this could be a good time for the Molokai Monsanto story because Monsanto's was mentioned.
So yeah, with that, so one of the projects I did on Molokai was with a piece of what's called state agricultural land. It's an ag park. They rent it out with long-term leases for so long. And in Hawaii, we never had an organic program, even in our colleges, and at all until maybe about just 15, maybe 20 years ago now. So on Molokai, which is a really small island, 5,000 people there, the university dominated everything that happened there. So for the ag lots, they were like, oh, well, this ag lot is condemned. And I'm all, well, why is it condemned? Well, it doesn't have any nutrients left and it's been chemically grown for so long, everything's gone in it. And I'm all, well, I'm going to lease that and I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to show you guys something different. And they scoffed at me and laughed and made all kinds of trouble to me. And I went in. And I looked at it, and one of the things that was growing was what we call halikoa. It's a type of lucratius. It's a nitrogen-fixing plant. And there was tons of it growing out there, and those grass growing out there that was bright green. So I'm like, guys, if there's no nitrogen or no potassium available, how's it green? Green is nitrogen. So I simply went and cut a bunch of the halicoa down, stacked it. Part of it I cut it half mast so it could get new growth on it. Then I set up a pond above it, two above water ponds with a solar panel and a pump, and I raised a thing called a zolo, which is a kind of an algae, a little plant. And then out of one, I just circulate it through the other. And before I watered anything in the field, I'd run it through this. And then I started stacking the halicoa. Every time I watered, it would grow this green material, maybe a foot tall in a week. Super like easy to break down. I test it, 18% potassium, 22% nitrogen in an organic form. I was like, duh, we can just make this right here. And so all I did for 4 to 5 months was cut it, stack it, circulate the water, throw the algae on top of it, add earthworms, add life. We broke all the records of anything that was ever grown on that land within 100 years since those ag leases existed, with nothing but a couple of pumps and a couple of tanks and some fish in them, and actually utilizing the invasive weed to work for us. Shortly after that, they started working with us and they took on an organic program and stuff. And around us, the government at the time was pretty weird and they made big deals with Monsanto. So one of the biggest Monsanto leases in the United States is actually on Molokai. And they do all their nasty seed projects and everything. But now
they can do multiple growing seasons in a year.
Yeah, 5 seasons in a year. And then think it's a small island, so there's all these politics of they're hiring some of the local people that don't know anything about it. And then so what do? Do you start fighting with your neighbors or do you set a good example? The field I was in that was condemned was Monsanto all around me. Eventually, all of their workers would come to me and go, wow, how do I do that? Oh, yeah. And they'd kind of clue in. And a lot of the people that worked for them would constantly quit working for them because they seen what was going on. Um, but like there was just a good example, and I never attacked Monsanto. I just did what I did and set a good example. And I think that's what we need more of. If build it and they'll come. And if we kind of focus on positively building models of regenerative agriculture that work, that's like the bigger part of the movement. For you, for instance, the fields that are on both sides of you, they're mowing them down. Eventually, they're not making much money out of that because they have to do it by the hectare. That's when you're smart. You go talk to them and you say, "Hey, let me give you as much as you're making off that corn of a hectare, and I'm just going to start growing trees on it." And that's happening right now. There's movements that are existing that way. But we need to take land back from the giant corporations that are just growing things and being subsidized, corn, canola, all these things. And we need to make major movement by people buying 50 acres, 10 acres, 5 acres, 100 acres, and starting to use the incentives that are put in place by USDA, a lot of the government money, to actually restore native ecosystems. Bring back the bumblebee, bring back the foxes, bring back places where the bees can take part in it. And now you can bring back the small farmer. Now there's this resurgent where people like yourself would love to have a 5 acre farm. And then for generations, something that's beautiful and that we have to recreate the farmer as well. It's not the old guy that they didn't want to come back like James Dean. It's not the old guy in straw. Now farmers are professional surfers and athletes and people with charisma and people who can do things. And like there's a different culture right now. So I feel like we're right on the edge of actually being able on a major level to inspire the homesteader, the small farmer, and the people that are big in business, maybe supporting the small farmers and investing in small farmers and whatnot. And bring back that whole mentality of stewardship versus like this giant monocropping money operation and having traded the value of the land to just monetary and not all these other things that come out of like this relationship to the land. That's the most important thing. And I see it's really missing.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And I think seeing it all from the legal side as well. I didn't know this. I had always tried, I grew up, my mom was very conscious of food and tried to buy from local farmers and organic before organic was a thing. But it wasn't until I started practicing law that I realized the extent to which the government is actually perpetuating all of this, right? So the subsidies, which you mentioned, I'm mentioning here because not everyone may know about this. The reason food is cheap is not because it doesn't take time or effort to grow, though I have heard that one man in a fancy tractor can farm 100 or 1,000 acres of monocrop, right? Which is never, ever how it used to be. But it's because the government is subsidizing farmers who will grow these monocrops, right? And so that's why the
food off of them too, and it's subsidizing the oil and gas.
I'm going to interrupt with a statistic.
Yeah.
All the corn grown in the entire world. Now imagine just in the United States, less than 3%, less than 1% in the United States, 3% of all the corn in the world is for human consumption.
Yes.
Is that a crazy? Like, think about it. You'll go through the Midwest and there's just hundreds of miles of nothing but corn and canola, but it's not even eaten by humans. It's animal food, it's ethanol, it's biodiesel, it's textiles, especially with the ethanol movement. So a lot of the small farms that actually were growing food are compromised, and we're growing food on them, but it's not feeding anybody. You know what I mean? And so then there's this global scale of, oh, we need to keep the corn price competitive with China. So just pay them for the corn, and it gets thrown away a lot of the time. Like, it just gets wasted and destroyed. So like, that doesn't serve us in any way. It only serves one guy on a tractor, and half the time, where's he at? In Vegas gambling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, we've given our whole health of our planet to a few that are good economically or whatever. And like, somehow we need to trade our value system so we truly understand what stewardship looks like. And how do we build a world where stewardship plays a part in economics, and beyond economics, a wealth that's like non-tangible in the same way.
I think it's right there because people, it's just, there's the not pandemic, what, I'm not gonna think of the right word, but like, people are so lonely, people are so sad, people feel like so much lack of meaning, that I feel like if they just touch it, like,
yes,
they touch the experience.
Literally, right?
Yeah, or literally, yeah, exactly. It's like, they're like, oh, there's more. Oh, I could have that. Oh, I could imagine actually like there being more. And it's just, we are raised in this society that is really like, you have to go in, like, this is the path you're on. All that matters is you're stacking up wealth. And like, of course we want to live a beautiful, abundant life, but there's like all of these other flavors that could be added in, including like the time spaciousness and time to connect. Like, me and Eddy talk about all the time, we're like the only couple we really know that like each other. And I'm like, because we're like, we spend so much time together because we have this abundance of time. And I'm like, what would happen if people could actually spend time with their family? What a concept.
It's like, I've been traveling for the last 21 months, and it's, we go to a place for 3 months and they tend to be pretty small places. And the number of couples who I have heard say like, oh, I actually like my spouse or my partner. And it's because they have time abundance again, right? Like, most often they're not working in the conventional 9 to 5. They're also happen to be in a culture usually where they have far more connection to nature, right? Whether they're in the salt water, at least they're walking around, they're in the sun, they're doing all the things. And they have all of a sudden a close-knit community as well, right? They have a higher concentration of people who can walk to hang out. You don't have to get in a car to have a human connection. And I think, in a way, if once you feel it, I think, and you feel the connection, whether you're in the salt water, whether your hands are in the soil, whether you eat Eddy's famous mangoes, which hopefully we can hear about, like, there's a remembrance of something that has been concreted over for generations, right? And it's so vitalizing, it's so nourishing, it's so wealth inducing in a way that is not how we define wealth today. And something else that you said that really made me pause is you're talking about how in this process of regeneration, if we want to use this as a metaphor again, is that, you can bring back the foxes and you bring back the cougars and the bees and the weeds and all of the things. And I think we live in purity culture, and that is shown everywhere. Like, monocropping is purity, right? It's like perfection. You look at it and it's allegedly satisfying to the eye. And so I think part of this process of scarcity to wealth, like, part of the scarcity is holding on. It's fear. I don't want the fox, the figurative fox. And if I can just hold on and hoard my wealth and then I'll be safe. But as we even see in this metaphor, the process of regeneration, the process of re-enriching the soil, requires what we could term a little bit of a mess, right? Diversity would be another word, but like diversity is another way of saying you now have new inputs. You're now thinking about the foxes that ate all my chickens. And you're like, okay, well, that's not ideal for me, but the foxes need to eat. How can I create an environment where there's enough for the foxes, enough for me, like all of the things? And you have to have a tolerance, though, for the unknown, right? Like so much of scarcity culture is like holding on and controlling, but life is inherently dangerous. Life is full of unknowns. And like we don't have capacity for that. But even in what you're saying in this arc, right, of land regeneration, it's right there for us. Like some part of us has to begin to trust, to become okay with a little bit of a mess or diversity, where it's the same thing.
Well, I think you teach this in Humans Who Trade. Like it's not like it's the sensitivity to see patterns and the sensitivities to trust your intuition. And I the story I like to tell with Eddy is when I was trying to learn surfing, we went out together, and we were like looking, you like look out at into the ocean to see waves or sets coming, and he's like, "Oh, you see that set out there?" And I'm like, "No, I see water. What are you talking about?"
That's me.
And it's like that is like some people call it intuition. Some people it could just be experience. Like it's probably a mix of both. And it's like when you're actually able to like spend time in actual nature, in the thing that is the 3D reality of our world, not the man-made reality of our world, you can become sensitive to like what is actually coming. And like, yes, there will always be unknown, but you can actually be able to trust your ability to respond to what's coming.
Yeah, and that actually gives way to a path away from scarcity. To me, like scarcity is the breeder of greed. It's the breeder of, or like the mechanism of that we have not. We need to hold on. We need to do this, and it's the opposite of faith. And I don't mean faith in a religion. I mean faith that your observations and your experiences, if you're tapped in, tell you it's going to be all right. It's going to help. You know what I mean? But that whole mentality of I've got some coming, let me grab as much as I can and just hold on to it. Well, guess what? When you're holding on like this, your hands aren't free to grab anything else. And like for me as a child, I retired when I was like 7 years old. Pretty much had to do with them failing me for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance and everything else. So I've never actually had a conventional job. So I've had to sort of rely on faith and my own faith of and not worry about scarcity because all around me was abundance. And the way I figured that out was earlier when we were talking, I spoke about these three phases of life. First, it's survival, then it's acquirement, and then it's philanthropy. What can I give back? And so I think as humans, I learned by the time I was 7, 8 years old that I could grow eggplants and watermelon and hand people wheelbarrows full of them. And I was already on the philanthropy route. So I didn't have to worry about scarcity. Whatever I needed was right there around me to my doing. You know what I mean? If I wanted a coconut, I'd climb a coconut tree. If I wanted to eat fish, I'd go catch some fish. If I wanted to surf, I'd go surf. So then I thought about these, like, people spend their whole life working, going to school, all these things. And then by the time it's time to go play, they're too old to do it. And they've like worked the whole time. And I'm like, so you know what? I used to tell people this as a kid all the time. By the time I'm in and I used to think 40 was old at the time, and I'm almost 60 now. So like, it's like when we get to that point of, what am I going to do? Well, I'll teach people what I learned then. You know what I mean? Like they're going to like, well, what do you do if you don't do this or you don't do that? You can't do this. And I feel like in a lot of senses, because I chose a path of faith, of being able to rely on the earth for my food and the earth for my entertainment and these relationships I've built, that I didn't really have to like worry about scarcity. There's always been nothing but abundance.
Yes.
And I think that it could be that way for everybody. But again, just in relevance to the metaphor of scarcity and abundance, it's around us. It's just about choices that we make.
That's such a beautiful story. And I think, again, if we're pulling the threads out that someone might follow, how do I move from scarcity to abundance? One of the things that I'm hearing you say is I recognize the abundance that was around, right? Like we have such a myopic view in this world of what abundance is, and it starts with a dollar sign and includes a decimal point, and that's all it is, right? But you're saying you had abundance of skill, right? You had abundance of natural resources and materials. It sounds like you also had abundance of humans, right? You were in contact. There was this circulation and this gifting that you were doing. And like, how does abundance come through that? Right. Mm-hmm. And so maybe one starting point is, where can I already source and feel a sense of enoughness? Because as you mentioned, poverty and greed are two sides of the same coin, which are inherently rooted in there is not enough. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if I'm greedy, I have to hold on because I don't have faith. I don't trust that there is more. I don't trust myself, or I don't trust that it's going to come. And poverty is actually like, there's just not enough. Right. And so we maybe start there. So let's talk a little. I would love to hear. Okay. So walk us through, and it's probably as much as you can in this format, but you find this piece of land that you look at, like you're talking about the one in Molokai, is that how you say it? That is allegedly dead, but that's not what. And so then walk us through a little bit. How do you see things when you first walk onto the land? And then what are some of the steps that you take? You alluded to some of them on that property that you can create this incredible regeneration in honestly remarkable time.
Yeah. So if we look, I think it all come down to observation. I think if we like really spend the time to really immerse ourselves and look, and what do we pay for wisdom? We pay attention. That's the commerce, is attention. So once we start actually deciding that we are going to invest attention into something, that's when the puzzle starts to unfold. When we give it 6 months to watch the bud turn into a flower and unfold, we know what's growing there. We've watched it happen. If we went through and we identified the insects that are there and we watched them, we'd see what they're eating. We'd see how long their egg cycle is. We'd pay attention to things. What works, what birds are eating them, what birds aren't eating them. So for me, the whole thing starts with observation. Looking at a place and going, well, what's going on here? Most people look at a place and not even know it's broken. And you might say dry and barren, but sometimes it's bright green. But it's all invasive trees. And they're sucking the water out of the ground, and they're enshrouding things that should be there. So it's not always so black and white or white and brown or whatever you want to call it. It's sometimes it takes that time of really, I like to tell people you need to learn to be present. So you need to immerse yourself into something. You need to be present with it and take that time to observe it. For me, I've been looking at things and observing them for so long, I can deduce pretty quick what's going on for the bulk of it. But then I still don't rob myself of not giving it the time. I'll still take the time to look, to watch the winds, to watch the weather, the rain, the sun. Where's the sun at in May from where it's at in June? These are all factors that are going to affect it. So along that journey of observation, not only do you find out what's wrong with the land and get some clue of what to do about it, but you also built the relationship to that land. And it's like it is a living entity that you kind of have to have that relationship with. If you start dating someone, you have to build that relationship with them. If you start a job, you have to probably build that relationship to your income and how that deals with and how you spend it or whatnot. So for me, observing it, seeing what's up, and then kind of taking what I know. For me, it's easy because I've been doing it for so many years and going, what are my first steps here? Just, yeah.
I'm going to make little inserts because I feel like it's it's like a little bit more clear as an outside looking in, watching you do it over and over again because you're in the weeds. And I'm like, I feel like one of the first things you do is like, if there's too many trees, you cut the trees to let the light in. Am I lost?
Sometimes not.
But sometimes
so if it's a barren field with no trees,
but if there's two, but like there's
so it all depends what kind of trees they are and what's going on. So I wouldn't use that as a general rule because in the last ones you saw that I did
for like a letting light in could be
right. So
phases.
It literally all depends the land.
I know. I agree.
No, I know. So I couldn't use that as that's one of the first things you do. Because at Laniapoko, I didn't have to let any light in. It was all barren and it was grass. So what I had to do was lay the grass down and cover the ground.
But in
A lot.
scenarios like Maliko, like Oluwalu,
I don't think that's. I think that, and I don't mean to argue with you on it, but for me, every scenario is different
I know.
because I want the ground covered from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's trees there, a lot of the time I'll leave them there so that they are still covering the ground and they're not just drying it out. Because if the sun is just open to the air, it's drying out and it's losing everything. So and in some areas, the trees are shading it. But if I cut those trees down, I'll turn them into wood chips and still cover the ground with them. But I'll let the light on the other trees that need to grow. So that is definitely one side of it and one part of it. But what I think I completely got thrown off. Sorry.
You're talking about after observation and spending time with the land.
Yeah, that I'm trying to talk about that as like the bigger picture.
Totally.
One place you might cut the trees, one place you might not. And one place it might need to be wet, black, rich soil. But other places you don't want black, rich soil. We're on a place right now that's considered a dryland forest. So if we come in and we think, oh, we want this lush forest here, we'd mess up what's around us. We'd actually displace what's supposed to be here. So if we choose to live in a dryland forest, then we know we have to live in a dryland forest, or else we're going to actually change the whole to our needs for it. You know what I'm saying on that? So it's like it's different in every single scenario, but I would say the key to it is really just observing it and trying to find out what's supposed to be there, and then making the changes according to what you observed on it on each spot.
Does coming in with the 5 elements of living soil play a role?
I don't understand.
Would you observe what element isn't there? Like, is there not enough life? Is there not enough moisture? Is there not enough?
Well, the funny part is like most of the time I'm looking at too much life, sometimes too much moisture. That's enabling things that shouldn't be there to thrive. Like, so for Hawaii, you see this lush green landscape. When you look at it, 99, almost 100% of what's there is not supposed to be there because we have this like very fragile ecosystem. As soon as a tree was introduced from Africa that didn't need much water, it grew big and it outshrouded everything else. So it's gone a lot of the time in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like kind of different every time. I think so.
So it sounds a little bit like that if we were to draw this out, the first phase is noticing, observing, noticing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's sort of noticing what is additive and noticing what is subtracting, right? Like, because it sounds like there's not objectively, it's not that this one thing is always good. It's given the circumstances, given the nuances or the terrain of this land, this is generative, this is not. And so it's sort of, that's the starting place. And then it sounds like, and you tell me, but it sounds like fairly soon after, is it adding nutrients or what happens next?
It's so different in every place. So some place I'll come to, it'll be a barren field. There's nothing there. So I'll say, okay, we need to bring in some topsoil there. It's been destroyed. It's been gone. It's been displaced. So we will start to give it structure, topographical structure, so that when water hits it, it doesn't just roll right off. So that's usually my starting point, is the earthworks themselves. And seeing where the topography is for it, so I can see where water goes. Then at the same time, I'll be looking there, and my wife is right. Most of the time, I'm cutting down trees because here in Hawaii, we're so overwhelmed with invasive trees that are not supposed to be there. Then now I want to cover the ground, not with things that are sucking it out, but lay them down in the form of wood chips. And then I'll add, if it's not there already, which a lot of the time it's there, it just needs the setting made for it. For instance, like if you're going to make sourdough bread, you have flour, but you need to add yeast. You need to let it rise and do its thing. It needs to create the life in it. So it's not much different than that. Well, first we'll look at what's there. We'll try to see what can we nurture that's here already, and what do we need to like not nurture, do something to get rid of it in some cases. And then what's going to work for us, what's going to work against us. There's so many different factors in it. Sometimes it's the insects, sometimes it's the water, sometimes it's the constitution of the soil, sometimes it's the type of trees that are on it. Um, but for me, basically, the first thing I'll do is I will try to negotiate what's there, see what it needs, and then topographically shape land so that it'll hold water or dispel water. If it's in too much of a place where it's getting too much water, then maybe it needs to shed it off. So I'll kind of try to get an understanding of what should be there. And then I will start broadcasting seeds, multiple different types of seeds. Some of them native, some of them not native. Some of them support plants like vetiver grass, things that will grow fast, put roots in the ground, start dropping leaves, start creating organic material, start putting shade on the ground. And then some of these trees that I call pioneer plants, they have a soft wood. They're only a tree that lasts 10 or 15 years. But in the middle of those trees, I'll plant a tree that'll last 200 years and will get 300 feet or 200 feet. And these first trees and these first plants will support what's to come in the future. So you kind of have to think everything out. I'm always thinking 20 years ahead into the way that nature does, because nature does take millennium to build these systems. But what can I do to speed that up? If there were a bunch of these pioneer trees here, or if this tree was here, it would have had these pioneer trees here probably growing for 20 or 30 years before this tree could grow. So what do I got to do to make that happen is I'll go cut a bunch of those pioneer trees from somewhere else and bring them in as wood chips and now cover the ground with them. And now add the earthworms and add the mycelium and then add the real trees and more pioneer trees. And now I've got the same scenario that forest was doing, but it's got like a 30 or 40-year jump on it because it would have taken that long for the pioneers to drop that much material. Does that make sense? So it's like kind of
incredible.
So something I like with one of the things that Eddy does, I'm going to see if I have like this little video of it, is he creates what he just was kind of describing is what he calls islands of these like planting islands. And he builds these mounds out, and you can I don't know if you can tell, like this is a mound of dirt and or like a pile that's almost like a bun. And he takes these like large trunks and wood and like lays it all out and then covers it with wood chips and covers it with dirt and then like plants into it. And what I like about this is because people think that, and I'm just going to put the link in.
Well, it's kind of like a fertility hub.
Yeah, but what I like about this is a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, that kind of farming is so intensive and you have to work so hard. And like, he will set that and just like let it sit for months. He's just like letting it do its thing because there's all of these different like macro and micro beings that are like breaking stuff down, and it's like almost kind of like you're saying with the sun rising.
So this berm, can you guys see that little thing that's on there? Is that playing on your screen?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a little screen there and there's a berm, and in it you can see some papayas and you can see some sugar cane. And if you looked at that mound 6 months before, that was big logs with wood chips on it and whatnot. And there's nothing planted in the mound, although we've grown things in the mound, but you see the papaya trees behind it. At that point, they're probably only 3 or 4 months old. And they've grown hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food on them already.
What?
This berm,
that's nuts.
So what the berm acts as is what we need to restore. And what, if you want to think of the term of regenerative agriculture, think of a forest. A forest, as above, so below, has a canopy. And then below it, it has a microbial canopy, a macro and the micro. There's a lot going on underneath it as above. So since we have tilled, we've interrupted those cycles, we've interrupted those networks, what we need to do is understand, almost like the avatar. I'll come in and I'll take an orchard and I won't fertilize the trees. I'll set the stage up where all these mounds that are outside the orchard, the trees will connect their roots into them. I will set the stage to create this massive network in these areas where it's been interrupted. And that's how we're able to do this in 3 years versus 30 years, is by understanding what it takes to create these networks, putting the right things in place. Knowing you have a tree that's going to send roots 30 feet in 3 months. and knowing that it's going to carry with it these endo and ectomycorrhizal, which are myceliums of mushrooms and whatnot. It's going to send it out. Now, along this path, moisture is going to be spread out like your vascular system does. Now, the little bacteria are going to follow it. Now, the little creatures themselves, the micro and the macro, are going to follow it. There's going to be a system set up where they're all feeding off of it. Now, a tree in the shade gets photosynthesis from a tree in the sun. That's how it works. The networks are rebuilt. And that's what we've done. We have severely interrupted sort of like what's going on in the avatar, what's below us with asphalt, with fields, with buildings. And the whole place is so disconnected. We have to reinstall these network connections, sort of, in these places and allow them to feed the way a forest feeds and regenerates. You don't need to take care of a forest. It takes care of itself. And that's the lesson that's been put in front of us, which we fail to see. We want to micromanage it and sell it. And that right there, that whole concept of we want to micromanage it and selling it, we're just selling out. We're not realizing that it's a circular economy. And it's like with our money's not deteriorating. If it doesn't deteriorate, it doesn't go back into the circle. So with that whole concept of it having a worth and a rise and a fall, that's what nature does. And I think that's relevant to like what you guys do. I watch you and how you play now I get to talk about your thing and probably get it wrong, but how you play with the cycles of energy of your financial stuff. You have to do the same thing. You have to build these networks. Yeah. You have to have all kinds of different people and players in it that play different parts. And this connection with it.
Well, and what I observed with you now, seeing, like since we've been together, you've probably built like 6 different big farm projects, and there's always like a 3 to 6 to 12 month period that it's like you're working all the time.
Right.
It's like super intensive work because he's like he has to make.
I'm resetting the network.
He has to like chop the trees and all the things, and then like it kind of feels like on my end, like out of nowhere, he's all of a sudden he's surfing all the time. It's like, oh, the network was set up enough that it can like in the colonies have established themselves, and like the worm populations, and like it's all in place that now it can take care of itself, and now it's minimal human intervention is needed. But that first initial push, if you want to get to a point quickly, like that's needed. And then there's like the harvesting. Wait, sorry, little side comment is we have this like big Hawaiian chili pepper bush in front of our house right now, and it's like my job to pick the Hawaiian chili peppers. It's my one harvest job. Telling Eddy, we need to prune the plant. It's creating so many chili peppers so often that it's taking me hours every single week to harvest this chili pepper plant.
Can't keep up with it.
And it's like, this is abundance, you know? Yes. It's just like, oh my God, it takes so much of my time to harvest all of this abundance.
So there's another like kind of interesting, and I wonder if that happens in the financial field or not. I'm going to go off on a limb right here. Let's use Oprah Winfrey. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Billions, right? If she doesn't spend hundreds of millions every year on projects and putting it back into the network, she loses it. It's going straight to the government. Yeah. So I'm not saying, and people put her on her pedestal like she's so good. I don't necessarily looking at that, but like as a rich person, you just do it because it's there. But what if we could actually pick where we network that money going to and make conscious decisions on everything that we do? And if we choose to make more money, make sure that everything that we don't want to go somewhere else, that we directly give it to something else. And that's kind of how a network works once you set it up in the forest. You know, there's mango, there's turmeric, there's chili pepper, there's papayas, there's taro, there's sugarcane. They're all lending to each other. I don't have to harvest them all at the same time. I can set them in there. And guess what? If I didn't get to the turmeric, and this year it's just going to put food for the other plants, and next year I'm going to harvest twice as much from it. And I have to look at those as long-term investments that I've put in place, sort of like stocks and bonds or something. And I've sort of invested into this network, and I know it's there. So again, I have that lack of scarcity because I know I have these thousands of trees planted that are going to produce, whether I choose to harvest them or not. If I don't harvest them, they're going to feed the network. If I harvest them, I'm going to put into my own network and choose where it goes. But so sorry, just a rant.
Oh, I think it's, wow, it's so beautiful because, I mean, it sounds like everything starts with the soil, right? Like different ways that you're adapting. That's where the network is happening. That's where the communication is happening. That's where everything is taking off from in a certain way. And so you're doing different things to help the soil. What sometimes it's too moist, sometimes it's too dry, sometimes it's depleted of nutrients and whatever. But then from there, this concept of, we are in this culture of the homogenous, right? We work the same number of hours every day. Everything is the same. It's industrialization, like mechanized culture. And yet what you're saying is very different. It's very cyclical, right? You're saying there's an investment of work and labor up front, and then there's an allowing, right? There's a sitting back and allowing the wisdom and intelligence of the land and nature to do its thing. But during that process, like, again, we come back to the need to hold on. You have to have trust and faith that at the end, even though you can't see the Hawaiian chilies or the whatever, the papaya, the taro, the sugarcane, you can't see it yet. You know that it's going to be there, even though there's this kind of, however many month phase of the unseen. Like, you don't know what's happening under the surface. Like, you don't know. And so it requires trust. It requires time. But it's also fascinating because if we look at the Taoist or the Chinese medicine approach, this is really their approach as well, as they say, like the energy of yin is you have to start with structure, and that structure and form and substance and nutrients are often sort of the first step. And then from there, there's yang, there's movement. So, and we keep cycling from one to the other, right? And so the yin is like not a lot of motion, but you need the foundation and you need the yin to sustain the yang, but you can't keep yanging forever. Right. You have to let the yin come back in to do its work of nourishing and creating structure.
Composting underground, composting the turmeric that we didn't.
I almost wanted to say, what if we chose regenerative agriculture to replenishing agriculture?
Yeah.
I like it.
It's funny. I started calling what we were doing with agriculture beyond organic and regenerative agriculture 30 years ago, before anybody had held it. And me and my friend used to joke, Scott, they're going to start calling it regenerative agriculture one day. Kind of funny. Now it's the buzzword years later on.
And it is sad for me because having been on the food loss side, what I saw happen, I've been on calls with scary mega corporations, hearing them strategically use labeling terms and saying, oh, we never want this term to be regulated because we're going to lose, our margins will go down. Like, we never, for example, want the word natural to be defined as a regulation, because natural means nothing and you can get a premium for your product. But what I saw happen, and I'm sure you well know, is on the National Organic Board in the US, it actually started out having pretty good intentions and pretty good standards way back. But the moment that big food and big ag realizes that there's a premium to be made on a certain buzzword, right, with like organic or natural or whatever, what they start doing is they start having people installed on the National Organic Committee. And then those people, once they have a majority, go in and actually change the regulations so that the term organic, which consumers have now associated with meaning something positive for decades, they're essentially gutting it from the inside. So now we're starting to see the first wave kind of in the mainstream of regenerative. And it's only a matter of time before regenerative is gutted.
It's already happening, the regenerative thing. I want to interrupt you on one thing, if it's all right.
Yeah.
You'll find this directly relevant to it. So years ago, I had a major brain injury. I got hit by a drunk driver, forgot probably 60% of all my memories, still to this day. We were in California, in Ventura, and I was a professional kite surfer before that.
Years after his accident.
After my accident. And I was like, man, I know I've been here. I probably did a contest here, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Turns out we went there a couple months after there again. I had started like a keto diet and unlocked some memories. Turns out I know Yvon Chouinard really well. He broke his arm with me here on Molokai many years ago, and had to get medevaced out. And I had these worms that at the time were eating styrofoam. I had cracked the code to actually compost polystyrene. And so, we went in, we did a bunch of interviews with him and stuff, that he gave me these private interviews with him. And he invited us to write on the regenerative, organic ag bill that went out. There were big fires in there later, and we actually didn't really get to follow through with that. But I found myself really disappointed when they released that we couldn't get it. Even though we gave a lot of concept to it and everything else, it got given to Hershey's. And all the giant corporations. And to me, in their folly, they thought, oh, those are the guys we got to get to make change. No, all you did was give them the buzzword, and it's like it doesn't bring justice, it brings justification.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And righteousness, rather, it doesn't bring righteousness, it brings justification. So I thought that was really interesting, and I know you probably got something to say on that.
No,
But
like there's so many stories of people like liking this one brand of food or this one like piece of clothing, and then it gets bought out by a larger entity, and then they change the formula, and then it's like you're
so
still
there is
backing-
no small regenerative organic certification anywhere right now. The only regenerative organic certification was set up by Patagonia, not the right way, and the big companies have it, and now like there are no small farms, so it's not even recognized. And now
So-
who uses the word regenerative?
Monsanto.
Because they took
Yeah.
the term that there's no till,
Yeah.
and they're claiming
Yes.
that Roundup
Yes.
and glyphosate is regenerative, which is like,
I'm
are you kidding me?
back. I'm pulling us back
That's right.
in the sense that like, what does this bring us back to again? Is like the solution is relationships.
Yes,
The solution
that's what I was
is to
thinking.
know your farmer
Yes, you
and know your
actually
neighbor.
talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Like you, and even if we
Visit
go to the farmer's market, right? You know, like in Seattle, for example, most people will just look for the USDA certification, right?
Yeah.
Because most people would prefer to not ask the questions. And in all
Right.
fairness, you might not know the questions to ask, and that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing. But even in the place that is supposed to be a site of connection, we're still accustomed to being arms.
Did you read Sacred Economics?
I have it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I have.
I'm in the middle of reading it right now, and like I just went through it, like one of his a part of his spiel on gifting and gifting economies, and like he talks about how like the reason why so many people are like so like the idea of gifting, it's a lovely idea, but they'd prefer to like pay money for something than to like receive a gift because of the like push away from like the fact that it would deepen a relationship, because then it's not like you're like giving something immediately back. It's like, no, you have to like wait
Think
a few
about it.
months, think what they would actually like, and it's like it forces you into intimacy, and like that so many of us in our culture are unwilling to do. And like it's so, because so I came from Michigan and like a suburban upbringing, and when one of the big like perspective shifts I had from when I first got together with Eddy was like, oh my gosh, he grew up in a 5,000 population environment where like you will see your neighbor again. Like you can't just like anonymously move through the world. You can't just like cut some off in traffic. You will see them at the grocery store later. They know your dad. And
It's so true.
and like we're so detached from that reality, which was our reality. All of our humans, that was our like our evolutionary background, not that far ago. So I'll stop.
And I think that this is part of the problem, right? It's because we, as you talked about earlier, we're in this like loneliness epidemic, right? Which for me is talking about disconnection, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are disconnected from self, we are disconnected from other, we are disconnected from the earth, all of it, right? And connection is this thing that we all need, right? It's like we're wired for it as humans, biologically and physiologically. And connection is beautiful, but connection is also uncomfortable, right? Because like you're saying, someone gives you something and now we can feel a sense of owing. And as a culture, we've tried to whitewash that away, right? We don't want to owe anything to anyone, but like you're saying, that's where the deepening of the relationship comes from, right? Like that's where the intimacy, that's where the wealth comes in my mind, is like staying with the tension, staying with the land, right? Staying with the connection through this, right? Which is really what you do.
Oh, so that sometimes is also hard to navigate. And the reason being is the mainstream where its mind is at. And I'm going to give you an example. Halloween comes time, everybody wants to take a picture in the pumpkin patch, right? Just because what people do, right? But they've been told, support your farmers, support your farmers. Now, one of the very worst farms on Maui, the only one that has black plastic covering all the ground everywhere. So And it's Mahi Pono now that's doing it. The Canadian corporation that came in and bought thousands and thousands of acres, probably for development, but they're faking farming right now, and they're just black plastic everywhere, Roundup everywhere, and the community is so uneducated, and most of our community that act like they're all in the know, where are their pumpkin pictures. Right there, where are they taking things of strawberries home from? Heptachlor, some of the worst chemicals known.
Yeah.
Everything's covered. So here's the thing. Don't just support a farmer. Educate yourself. I visited 100 farms in California, and not one of them had a pile of compost, organic farms. So I was like,
Yeah.
all these farms are bullshit. They're all
Yeah.
buying chicken pellets from a Tyson factory and regurgitated fish from another bad industry or bat guano, whatever it is. And so they just shifted one bad thing into another
Yeah.
space. And if we don't change those cycles, and again, building a relationship, if you're going to support a farm, go meet them. Go ask them. Go see what they're doing. Go let them convince you they're making change. Build that relationship with them, and then support them wholeheartedly. Buy your food from them. Tell someone else to go to that farm.
And even more than that is like with current events, with like what is, I forget the word, the chemical,
The chlor.
no, with Iran, the fertilizer that can't be brought in.
Urea.
It's like the
Ammonium nitrate.
Urea is like people can't get it. So farmers like look 1 to 2 years out from now. Food is going to get so expensive because of current events.
And rightly so. It's going to get expensive if we keep
Yeah.
it with the giant corporations. But if we decide to take it on, it'll be cheaper than ever.
Food.
Yeah, like if one thing could come out of this, and all the people that, financial world and all these things are important, but if we could help inspire people to take just one step, grow one plant on your porch, whatever it is that starts to make that connection for you, then you're going to hand it to your children and to your grandchildren. And what's happened is for the last 80 years, it's been the opposite. They haven't handed it to their children. I don't want you to have to farm like me and have that hard life, because they saw it as a hard life. You know what I mean? They didn't see the wealth. And so, like, there's something to being aware of what the wealth is. Go, sorry.
I think that's one of the key questions that I hope everyone watching can at least feel into, is what is wealth actually? Because we have been sold and fed a singular vision of wealth, and it involves, like I said, dollars and cents and things, typically commodified things. But, as we talk here more, the wealth of connection, and connection is multifaceted, right? To, like we said, to self, to others, to land, to the process of being alive, right? Like that is wealth. And there are so many facets of it, which we've been talking about today, from moving from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance. I mean, it sounds absolutely wild what you're talking about, the amount of food and the speed with which you're able to create that. Like that is unhinged in the best way, and makes me so excited. So a question I have for you, Sam. Eddy, you've been living this your whole life, right? So this is like oxygen to you. Like you fundamentally get this, like this is everything. But Sam, you lived in another world that exists, and then you came to this. So like when you are now on abundant land and you're living this wealth and you're living this abundance, like how does it feel to you? Like in the subtleties, like how does it feel different from, let's call it, before times? Like what do you notice in yourself? What sensations, emotions?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about, because I grew up lived till I was 23 in Michigan, and then I moved here from there, and I've never lived anywhere else really. And it's interesting from having visited other places, is like, I don't realize how many trees are actually in Michigan until I like go to other places. So I actually feel as though I had a lot of nature because of just the quantity of trees in the state that I grew up in. And Eddy's about to show
No, keep talking.
fruit.
No.
But right after the Lahaina fires, we because Eddy was like working 18-hour days with like relief efforts directly after that, and we were inside of the military blockade supporting the community, and we were living in an RV on the highway because that's where, like, and had to be down there because he was like acting pretty much as 24/7 security for all of the stuff that we had brought in for community support, like the millions of dollars worth of stuff for people. And as a highly sensitive person living in an RV right next to a highway, like even though it's like a Maui highway, which is like nothing compared to any like actual city. Right after that, like 6 months later or something, we moved up onto the land that we own, that we had bought a couple years before. And I just remember the amount of like unbelievable relief from moving from being around people all of the time, being right next to all of the noises and the driving by and you don't know who's coming, to land that was spacious and like ours and like we felt safe. That was like the strongest reaction change that I felt, or because it was just like such like a stark contrast side by side. And it is really the you can sense when a land is taken care of and cared for, and you can sense when you are actually the minority in terms of like living beings. And like I joke all the time of like I have a very like specific need in terms of human to tree ratios. Like we need lots of trees, very few humans in like my direct environment. And I think everyone feels that. That's why forest bathing is a thing, you know? Like we're not meant to like there needs to be more trees than humans for us.
I just grabbed this from right out our front door. Look at that. There's
Oh
just
my
strawberry papayas, and we just throw the seeds out, and there'll be that much more trees around. But this is how she gets to eat every day. She's like, Eddy, I need fruit to eat. So
Yeah, I
Oh
did.
my gosh.
I just wanted to show you that.
And this is an example of a proof that nature is built for abundance. How many
Yes.
trees? How many trees are right here?
That. And how
Yeah.
many papayas from those seeds?
Oh, so to get this,
Hundreds in a year.
and get
In a
this,
single tree.
this is something that's interesting. The average papaya tree on a global scale produces 40 pounds a year. I'm upward of 300 to 600 pounds a year on a single tree, consistent. My trees last for years, and I don't have to touch them.
Yeah.
Once you built the network, they go that way. But if you're putting them on flat ground, tilling it, putting black soil, and relying on fertilizer, it's a totally different thing. Now, if you take this and you test it for nutrient density, the flavor, the sugars, it's through the roof. The nutrient density tests we get on the food are night and day of anything you'll find in the store. So while we think we're eating and we think we're actually building our body and building our stuff, we're actually not. And you wonder why cancer is so rampant and all the different health things that are going on right now. And I think once you choose to have this relationship to what you grow, even if it's only a little small part of it, a couple of little things here and there, there's a wealth that comes with that I think probably has a tripler effect
You
on
used the
itself.
line before we started, like open up the meeting of like I could give you $100 and you'd forget about it in a week versus if I.
Oh yeah, so one of my main sources of commerce here is not only this, but imagine someone hands you that when you're on Maui and it tastes like sugar and it's amazing. I grow these amazing mangoes with tiny little seed in them, and they're the best mangoes in the world. And everybody who tastes them is like, oh my God, I didn't expect that. That's the best thing I've ever had in my life. Wow, what is that? How'd that happen? And it's just like common sense. Everybody's mangoes should be like that if they spent the time and they actually made the connection. And then so for instance, we're at a hotel. A friend of ours let her use their hotel room the other day. And there's a local lady sitting at the counter. And a local lady, none of us really want to deal with the tourists or anything like that. So we kind of like scoff on them a little bit. And she's looking at us. She don't know I'm a local boy over here. She just sees tourists, keeps her head down. I go up to the desk and I say, I got something for you. And she goes, yeah, what? And she expects me to give her $1 for a tip or something like that. And I pop the mango up from over the counter. She almost starts crying. She gets it. She just lights up. And you could tell it was the one thing she wasn't expected, but I knew she was of like Tongan, Polynesian descent. And these are the things that make people happy over here, where people are happy being on the beach, seeing their children grow up, eating good food. The things that drive other things are in small towns aren't always the same. And so in a small town, in a place where there's a connection, your commerce is your apple pie, your mangoes, your artwork, your smile, whatever it is. And we need to understand the value of that And that's the only way we're ever going to truly ever experience wealth. Like you can have all the money in the world, but it's only a tool. I can go get this and I can go get that with it. But wealth really comes from that connection with what's around you. I don't only mean nature, but I mean the people. And I've found that once you include the people in the nature, that's like major crazy. And because we're on the cutting edge of reintroducing people to nature constantly, whether it's kids or old folks or whatever it is. I see it every day unfold in front of me, showing people a little bug they never saw or a flower or whatever. And I see how it lights people up, and it's really fulfilling. So I think that if we as humans could take on those as luxuries and like this wealth that's like so, I don't know. Yeah, but just food for thought.
No, I agree 1,000%. And I'm thinking back to the matriarchal societies and cultures that have been studied. And one of the common threads is that sacredness is woven through the entire culture, right? And like you're saying, like a mango is sacred. It's not a thing with a price tag that you can just buy and consume sort of mindlessly. In everything in that process of the growing it, of the gifting it, of the seeing her reaction, of her eating it and knowing the meaning that it has and where it came from, right? Like that is
the journey.
That is imbued with sacredness, which we for the moment don't care about. But I think the other thing to remember is that this way that you're talking about is still in all of us. Like this current moment of scarcity and patriarchy and industrialization and all the isms is but a historical blink of an eye, right?
That's
like,
right.
And like
illusions.
You get exposed to it and something awakens in you. And you're like, oh, like maybe we don't have the knowledge, maybe we don't have the collective wisdom in this moment, but that deeply human connection awakens so quickly, I have found.
Yeah. So good.
We have a few minutes if anyone has comments or questions.
Lucy did right. Food should not be cheap is such a paradigm shift. I've never thought that food should be cheap. But it's funny that it's a funny entitlement that has crept in. Like I want access to all things at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. If we really look at that journey, the only thing that's made food cheap is slavery. The only thing that's made it expensive is disconnection, giving it to someone else to grow it for us. That disconnection, giving up our relationship to nature, that's what's made it expensive. Now, if you tell me I don't got no food, how hard does it? You don't have a job, you don't have food. Why don't you just grow some? And nowadays, it's no excuse. A parking lot in the city, an asphalt parking lot. I've shown people we've taken parking lots and turned them into paradise.
Go do work trade at
a farm. You know what I mean? Like we kind of, how do you inspire that? Like in folks, that balance of like trying to find that. And I think it should be standard protocol and practice in schools. They should teach people to grow things. You know, I remember they gave me an apple seed when I was in the first grade, same place they failed me at. And I was like, apples don't grow here. So you're giving me something in a pot that's never going to grow. So I could watch it and then watch it die. So it's like, I was already, man, something's flawed with this. So I think I think that whole connection thing, it really comes down to it.
I am inspired. I have been missing my connection to this process, right? Because I did it for so many years.
And one other option for those of us who work online is I think that it is a part, an alchemical process to be able to funnel money that you make in a remote setting into physical, local projects. Yeah. So like a percentage of all of my income goes towards planting trees like on this land that we're a part of. And like also with my magical practices, like every day I give offerings to the land spirits of this land right here. So there are ways, even if you are like still like really plugged into the online space, in order to like funnel that energy into your actual local space.
Right. And if you got to pay buku taxes, why don't you just try taking 10% of that, 20% of that, and trading it to local effort? Mm-hmm. Give it to something local. It is a tax write-off. Mm-hmm. You gave it to them instead of to the war machine. or whatever it is that they're using it for,
Well,
whether it's industrialism or whatever. If you give it to local causes,
yeah.
find a nonprofit that's farming, and you know what I mean?
You don't realize that you can actually dictate what your dollar goes
Right.
to. With a nonprofit, if you're giving hundreds, thousands, or more dollars to a nonprofit, you can say, I want you to use this money for this specific thing. And they literally have to use it in that way.
Where when you give it to Uncle Sam, it's just going into whatever they want to put it in. So I think I might be ignorant to it because I'm not on the big money thing, but couldn't everybody just say, the 80%, if you're on a certain realm, that's all going to the government? Could I shift 20 or 30% of that by actually just being savvy and giving them to the right places instead of it going there?
Yeah.
That's a lesson that I think is amazing. And Sam is really inspiring with that because she
Yes.
consciously chooses to give to places, not just trees on our place, but she makes sure what comes in with her place goes to conscious places like that. And I think, again, that's building the reality out of that too.
Because it's like the future, like either the earth is going to require this or we're going to be ahead of the curve of like degrowth and localization. So it's like we might as well be funding and creating systems for a utopian, beautiful future instead of like a dystopian, like we're all fucked future.
Yeah. So beautiful, so inspiring, and just fun to talk with both of you.
This is so funny.
So fun.
Come visit us and come get a fresh mango to eat. You're only in Japan.
I already told her that she
Easy.
needs to host a Humans Who Trade retreat on Maui.
Yeah, and if any of your people who watch us or whatever, you want to reach out and come see us on Maui, no problem.
Eddie's
We're all good.
Eddie's really active on Instagram. If you want to follow along, it's
Oh,
at
yeah.
Living Earth Systems.
Living
Yeah.
Earth Systems. Okay. And you can also follow Sam, whose work follows the same model, right? Of regenerative business. So you
Yeah.
can follow her as well. It's The Dirty Alchemy. Is that right?
Yeah, at the Dirty Alchemy on Instagram.
Yeah. So I'm going
And
to
I'm just dirty.
He's just dirty.
At Living Earth Systems and at The Dirty Alchemy.
Yes.
The theme here is dirt in the very best of ways.
Yes.
Oh, well, all right, you too. Thanks for being here and just sharing all of this magic with us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Well, yeah, I'm going to recommend one book on the way out.
Okay.
Dirt, The Erosion of Civilizations. I think it's David Montgomery or Michael Montgomery.
David.
Okay.
David Montgomery, Dirt, The Erosion of Civilizations.
Okay.
Lesson in ethnobotany all the way back to the Fertile Crescent. I think you'd be really interested from some of the things you've said.
Why
I will read that. We could also recommend both Eddy and Sam's books as well. I'll recommend them. Regenerative Business and How to Build
A Cubic Yard of Living Soil.
Yard. I was going to say but
Sand and cardboard and whatever. It's a gateway drug to like getting a connection to nature and knowing that you could do it right in a parking lot or anywhere, and that you could start with the basic components and understand what living soil is. It opens the door for it. So thanks everybody. Thanks for giving us your time and everything.
Thanks,
Aloha.
everyone. This was so fun.
All right, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Okay, that was so good, right? So if anything in there landed for you, Eddy's thing about observation being the foundation of everything, or the conversation about gifting economies or intimacy, or just the idea that scarcity and greed are two sides of the same coin, I would love to know. Come find me on Instagram. I am at The Dirty Alchemy. And if you want to follow Eddy and what he's doing on the land, he's at Living Earth Systems. He's pretty active on Instagram and posts lots of visual things with the land. And Erin is at I am Erin West. That is it for this one. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.